already. It's hard to believe that she is 11, but she is, and she is deaf. She has 2 cochlear implants that she uses to understand the world around her. I just want to recognize Alicia quickly, who's on the screen with me. She is our board treasurer of Hands and Voices. She is also a parent of a 3-year-old who is hard of hearing, and we can hear a little bit more about him in a little bit. We do have remote conference captioning accessible through Hamilton Relay. And we have our interpreter tonight, Letty, with Civic Access. So if anyone, kind of a basic Zoom rule is before you start talking, I know it's kind of unique at first, but if you could remember to state your name, so the interpreter and the captioner are able to capture that and everyone can follow along accordingly. So I see a few familiar faces and a few new ones, which is very exciting. Virginia Hands and Voices, we are a nonprofit, parent-driven organization. Then we support deaf and hard of hearing children, ages 0 to 21, technically. And what makes us unique is that we are unbiased about communication choices. So we believe what choice your family makes is the right choice, whether it's to talk or to sign, or to use cued speech, or to use a combination of those. So as I'm sure you know, it's a very diverse. Our children are very diverse with how they are and communication choices. Hello, welcome. We're just getting started. So what we had one of these a couple of months ago. Oh, we got a little kid joining us. Hello. We decided to leave the first 30 minutes first 30 minutes for introductions, and then after that kind of leave the floor open and just see how the conversation goes. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Alicia. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, maybe just tell us about your child, where you live, and anything that you would like to know. And then I would say just pick a person that you see on the screen. And if you are chosen and you feel comfortable introducing yourself, great. If not, feel free to say pass, and we will pass you. If you want to just listen and be an observer, we completely respect that. So Alicia.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Hi, everyone. So my name's Alicia, and I live in Fredericksburg, Virginia, with my husband and 4 children. Our youngest, our 4th son, his name is Theo, and he just turned 4. And he was born with a progressive hearing loss due to Pendred syndrome. He currently wears hearing aids, and we use total communication. So we speak, we sign, he lip reads, we use some visual phonics as well. So a little bit of everything. And he is gradually losing his hearing due to the syndrome. So that's kind of why our family chose to also learn ASL and incorporate that into our communication plan for him. And yeah, he's doing great. And I'm excited to see some new faces tonight. Lauren, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lauren Dickinson. And this is Daniel, my man. We are actually a family that's currently in Seattle, but moving to Virginia in June. I'm from the Virginia area, so I'm excited to move back. So I wanted to kind of start understanding the services and supports in Virginia. So I am married, and we have one other son, Arthur. Daniel is the one that has hearing loss in his left ear. So it's profound hearing loss, and he is scheduled for a cochlear implant on April 1st. So we're excited. It's a whole new journey over the last 6 months when we discovered his hearing loss. So we've got a lot to navigate. Yeah, that's me. We can jump to Lawrence.
Did you say Lawrence?
Can I have?
I'll let her talk.
Well, I just want to ask Lauren before we start, to where are you moving in Virginia?
Well, we're staying with family in Leesburg, And then we have no
Oh, it
idea.
didn't work.
Someplace in Northern Virginia.
Okay, good. Well, we're in Fredericksburg.
Great.
So I think we met most of you last time. This is Larry Nordloff. I'm Sharon Nordloff. We have a 36-year-old son who lost his hearing from meningitis when he was 2. And he was one of the first 75 children in the United States to get a cochlear implant. So, and he still has it. A lot of people have had to be re-implanted, but not him.
As the original.
He is the original. Yes, he does. So let me know when I can bring up a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Maybe this is just introductions, but Terry, I'll let you follow, let me know about the agenda. New business.
Okay, this is Terry. Yeah, that's perfect. We're going to kind of do introductions for the next 15 minutes for those who want to, and then we'll just have a casual discussion about anything that does come up, or that especially new parents want to know, and questions that they want to ask. Thanks for joining us. We love the Nordoffs. We see them on a regular basis here on our virtual meetings.
I don't know where Eric is tonight.
I saw him pop on for a minute, and then
Oh, did
he
you?
must have dropped off. So hopefully we'll hear from him. Thanks for
Yeah.
joining us.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday, right? He
I'm
has
right
a
here. Eric's is still here.
ASL social group on Tuesdays. I can't remember what time. That may be part of it.
Okay. Well, Eric Raff, would you like to go?
Yeah, I thought you were talking about me when you were referring to Eric, but okay, sorry. So good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Raff. I was born deaf, and I grew up oral, so what we call it today. We used LSL in today's terms. So I went to Gallaudet University when I was 19 years old, and that's where I learned sign language and total communication. And then eventually I became, fluent in sign language. And then I started, kind of code switching here and there to depending who the audience is. Sometimes I'll use spoken English. So that's me. So Lauren, it's actually funny. So I just moved from Washington State, actually. And just recently I left 6 years ago. I lived in Olympia.
Ah.
So I settled in here to Richmond. So welcome to Virginia as another Washington State person. So I guess that's my introduction for tonight. I did want to add a little bit more. I'm also the director of the Virginia Department of Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I love working with hands and voices on the regular. I worked with a similar organization in Washington State, and it's great to see there's another one in Virginia. I'm always here to support parents of the deaf children. So thank you.
Anne-Maureen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Anne-Maureen Woodyard. I have 2 kids and my husband. We live in Arlington, Virginia. Both of my kids were born hearing. My oldest is 13, and in April, my youngest child, my daughter, at the age of 9, she suddenly lost her hearing. We still don't know the cause. We've been to several specialists and even seen genetics. But I guess in April, she went from mild to profound in the high frequency to basically profound in her left ear over a span of 4 months. And in December, she received a cochlear implant on her left side, and she wears a hearing aid on her right. And she's actually amazing and has adapted to everything, I think, definitely quicker than I have, but so that's kind of our quick story. So Lauren, like you, it's kind of like on the fast track of just trying to learn everything and keep up with school and her activities. And I guess even just, I guess people that, acquaintances, things are starting to open up. So I don't even know how to explain to people the situation, or even if I have to, but yes, I'm here just to listen to everybody. And that's my short intro. So.
Thank you. This is Terry. Thank you for sharing that. We've connected with Anne-Marie a couple of months ago. We were fortunate to have a private Zoom meeting with her, and we're happy to have you here again tonight. And it's so good to hear that your daughter is thriving. That's the most important thing. Lauren, would you like to go ahead, and then we'll move on?
Hi there, everyone. My name's Lauren Good. I'm deaf. I was born hard of hearing, and then I found out I was profoundly deaf later on, maybe when I was around 2 years old. So my parents found out. I didn't have any sign. I used LSL. I lived in Massachusetts at the time. And I noticed my hearing became more and more, hearing loss became more and more profound. I was at school, and then I would arrive home with headaches, with just trying to understand speech. And then at the age of 10, I had a tutor who was hearing, and her husband was actually deaf, and we had an interpreter. And so I was like, oh, wow, she had a master's degree. She, owns a home, she's independent. And so seeing that kind of representation really inspired me to do the same. And that's when I learned ASL. And when I was 10, I didn't want to learn ASL until I met that deaf man. And so when that happened, my mother decided to set up an ASL class in our home. The school teachers, my family, my parents, they all took ASL with me. And so that kind of reduced my resistance. And my language exposure, drastically improved. And ever since then, ASL has been in my life. And that's pretty much who I am. Yeah, I went to Gallaudet University as well. I got my bachelor's in social work. And then when I graduated, I went to Ohio State University. I had interpreters in all of my classes. I moved to different states, and I finally settled down here in Virginia. I have 2 hearing children. It's really nice to hear some of your stories. I totally get it. One of my children is dealing with something that it's hard for me to process. Something that we need doctors' helps with, and a doctor saying one thing and then another one saying another thing. So just getting conflicting information. So I understand what you're going through.
Thank you. This is Terry. Rochelle, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Sorry, I had trouble connecting for some reason. But anyway, so I'm Rachel O. I live in Arlington, Virginia, and I have a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old son. And he was diagnosed with a cookie bite, hearing loss in both ears, probably about the age of 4 during his 4-year-old checkup. And so he's been wearing his hearing aids since then, and we have not had any problems. He went to a smaller school, and I think at that age, everybody in the school, there was only 1 class per grade. And so all his friends knew he was just the kid with the hearing aids, and wasn't a problem. And then we moved to middle school, and now he's having trouble. He's resistant to wearing it, and his kind of hearing loss is a little, I guess it's deceiving maybe, because he can hear high frequency and low frequency, but it's the in-between sounds that he has difficulty hearing. So he feels like he does not need his hearing aids or any assistance. So we kind of hit a, there's been some tension in our family. And I was talking to someone, and they said, well, do you know anyone else with, hearing problems or issues or hard of hearing? And I realized I don't know anybody, and he doesn't know anybody either. He goes to a school where he is the only one with hearing who requires hearing aids, and the teachers require an FM system. Is that right? That like a microphone, which we just found out he has not been giving to the teachers.
Oh.
So yeah, and then so I got called into the school because he's been having loss of focus and his grades have been going down, and so it just has been rough the past couple of weeks. So our audiologist told us about this organization. So I just came to hear what it's all about and meet some other people.
Great. This is Terry. Thank you so much. We're so happy that you joined us tonight. I think the majority of us hearing parents can agree with you that when we have a child who's born who can't hear, oftentimes it's the first person we've ever met like that. And that's how it was for me. I had never met a deaf person or a person who used hearing aids before, let alone cochlear implants. It was just so foreign to me. So it's a lot to take in, on this journey of kind of how is your life going to look with this in your family. It's not something that you want to ignore, necessarily, but how do you really support it and incorporate that and normalize it, if you will, for you and for your child and for his peers. I know some of you have younger children, but I think us who have those teen tweens, and Lauren can relate to this, Lauren Good, because I've talked to her about this plenty of times. Just those social, emotional needs when they start to get older are completely different than how things are in elementary school. So anyways, I don't want to keep talking. I would like to hear from everyone else. And really the point of this is for us to just ask questions and get to know one another and realize that I think if you walk away with any message today, it's that our kids are going to be just fine at the end of the day. And they will be because they have you as a parent, and you're here because you care and you want to learn how to raise them to be successful children and to help them advocate. So you're doing great. The first step is accomplished. And for those who have younger children or children who are newer to the journey, I give you a lot of credit because, for me, myself, it took me years to kind of figure out what I needed. It took me years to figure out that I should talk to other deaf people or hard of hearing people, that I needed other parents like me in my life. I didn't think I did for a long time. And then when I started to let that part into my life, my world just expanded, and my daughter is doing great because of it. So anyways, with that said, I think we've all done our introduction. So does anyone have questions for some of you parents who are newer to this? Is there a topic that you would like us to talk about? I mean, I have a few ideas written down, but I'd really like the conversation to just flow and for us to just have a discussion. So does anyone feel brave? They have okay, Lauren, go ahead. Lauren, good.
A brief comment. When we're on a topic, if there's another person who maybe you've never met a deaf person before, you know, the statistics is 1 in 1,000 chance that you would meet a deaf person. So it's, you know, we're not invisible, but you don't notice us, right? Except for when you're looking for the hearing aid or for when we're signing, right? So there's so many, you know, in all these years, you may never meet a deaf person. So I just wanted to add that piece to that.
Thank you. This is Terry. So does anyone want to start? Is anyone brave enough to talk about a question that they would like to ask this captive audience? Yes, Lauren.
So, like I mentioned, we're moving to the area, and we don't really know where we're going to live, but we want to be super mindful about a great place to raise Daniel, and where he will get a good education, where teachers kind of understand what he needs. And so I'm looking for kind of, if people have recommendations on schools or programs, anything like that, because I feel like we have an opportunity to set him up for success when we get.
Alicia, do you want to chime in?
Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I'm sorry. Somebody else was speaking?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I see. Okay. So the challenge for the parents is, you know, wanting their child to go to the best school where they're going to receive the best support, right? Who has a good support system in place, someone who's not going to be opposed or challenge the needs, right? Because the district gets specific funding to provide these needs. And it's difficult, right? Because you have to go through the process of the IEPs and whatnot. And I've heard so many stories from parents that just struggle, right, to just get the school support. And so there's a lot of fighting and advocating going on no matter where you go. Now, of course, identifying which schools are within a great school district. I can tell you that here in Richmond, they've got two counties in the community of Richmond and Henrico.
Enrico.
And Henrico, sorry. And the second one, I'm sorry, I missed. What was this one? Chesterfield. In Richmond, sorry, Richmond. And then CF, Chesterfield, sorry, Chesterfield. I can tell you that they provide good support here for this area. Those are the best. The others out there, they're okay. You may have to struggle a little bit. Leesburg, I'm not sure. North Virginia, they have a lot of good resources. Fairfax and Leandria. And then there's one school that you can consider, which is Model Securely. Sorry,
Model Secondary School.
Model Sec.
Kendall.
Right. So okay. So I was thinking Mass, but their kids are younger. So I'm thinking kindergarten. Maybe Kendall. Gallaudet University in DC. They have an elementary school center and a high school at Gallaudet University. Some of the campuses are separated from the actual the college campus. But it's advocation no matter where you decide to go. There's going to be advocating going on.
Yes.
Okay.
Alicia, and then we'll go to Miss Nordoff.
Okay, hi, this is Alicia. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to also add spotlights here while people are talking. So hopefully that's working okay. Okay, so I know, Lauren, I know that in Fairfax, if you want to stay up in Northern Virginia, like I said, I'm a little bit lower in Fredericksburg, but in Fairfax County, there is an elementary school called Canterbury Woods that has a pretty big deaf and hard of hearing program, from what I understand. I believe that they offer curriculum in different modalities. So whether you choose to use ASL or oral or cued speech, I believe they do all three. So that could be something that a place you might look into in Fairfax County, because at least then you know that there'd be a good population of other deaf or hard of hearing children.
Which one?
It's called Canterbury Woods, and it's in Fairfax County.
Ms. Nordoff, do you want to add something?
Yes, our story is a little different, of course, because Eric grew up in the Chicago, St. Louis area. We could not, well, let me back up. After he got the implant, we were looking for three things. We were looking for support from other parents to get a better understanding of what to do, how to do it right. The schools are great, but talking parent to parent is probably the best thing that can happen. We joined AG Bell because after Eric got the implant, we were told that if he wanted to use it to the best of his ability, he needed a good rehab program. So AG Bell provided some support. Central Institute for the Deaf in St. Louis is where we ended up. We moved actually from Chicago, from Lake County. We had a public school system there, CEDAL. We visited the classroom and we found that there was not enough oral. There was more signing. Not that he wasn't going to learn how to sign, but the important thing was if he got implanted, he needed to retain the language that he'd had. So we ended up moving to St. Louis. St. Louis Central Institute for the Deaf and St. Joe's were two schools there. I'm not sure St. Joe's is still around. And they had a grant, they had a research grant, and so we moved there so that he would start with oral rehabilitation. He was there until third grade and then went to school in the Parkway system. So I cannot say that much about Virginia. I will say this, his best friend, medical doctor, Mark Leacoff, who also has a cochlear implant, was in the Fairfax County school system. And
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Hold on. Did you find me? Okay, perfect. They lost the interpreter. It went to something. Okay, we're
Okay.
good. Sorry. Whew.
So Fairfax County, I've heard good things about. Specifically, Canterbury Woods is where Eric is now doing some mentoring for a third grader. So the program there says to me there must be some other deaf children and that the support services that parents might seek would be there as well. Better understanding than, some of the other school districts. That would be, so I would say join AG Bell, oral or not, just join because they have a biennial conference every 2 years. And AG Bell their headquarters is in Washington, DC. They can provide you with just a lot of support and connections with other parents of deaf kids in the area. And I would say, look at the school districts. I'm sure if you called, well, Eric might be able to help me. If you called the Department of Education, would they have any statistics on some of the best programs for the hearing impaired in Virginia. I don't know. But I would get that parental support and I would get that rehabilitation.
Mhm. And this is Terry. Oh, and I see Amory, I'll go to you next. I was in the same situation. I moved here 5 years ago and just threw a dart at the map and yeah, it landed here. But I did have a area kind of focused in to 4 different counties. Everything here in Virginia is county specific. So a whole county is a whole school district. It's different than other places because not 100 schools can fall under one county and they all operate the same. But I would kind of throw your dart at the map and see where it lands and then call the special ed offices of those schools. That's what I did. Ask to speak to someone in the special education department, ask if they have a deaf and hard of hearing program. Even a 20-minute conversation, I think you'll get a pretty good idea if that's somewhere where you want to be or not. Obviously, bigger cities have more deaf and hard of hearing children, like Northern Virginia or Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, Richmond. It just kind of depends what you're looking for. So and then we do have a school for the deaf here in Virginia as well. There is a school for the deaf in Stanton. If you are interested in that, that is a residential school. But I think a good place would be, and I can get with you on the side if you want, but I think a good place to start would be special education departments at schools and just asking the question, do you have a deaf and hard of hearing department? And if they say no, then I don't know if you want to be a trailblazer, then you may want to move there. My daughter's also the only one in the school who's deaf or hard of hearing. She's the only one in the whole entire county who uses an ASL interpreter. So even though there are other kids who are kind of like her around, they're still not really the same, and maybe it would have been different if we would have moved somewhere else. But Amory, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to, we're in Arlington County, and I did visit a school that has a DHH program in our county. It's Fleet Elementary, and it's a program within a mainstream elementary school. And I think there's about 9 kids in that program, and they have, DHH teachers, speech therapists that are all on site at the school. So they can pull the kids from the classroom for services. But I think the main goal is to have the kids set up with their own interpreter. And I guess however long that takes, then they can have an interpreter throughout their journey of in the school system. So we don't go there, but that was our tour. Yeah, my daughter wanted to stick with her current school, but we have a slightly different situation. So, but it seemed really great.
May I just say hi to somebody we realized is online now, and that is Laura Yellen. Hi.
Hi, how are
Leonie?
you?
How is Leonie?
She's good. She's actually over here playing. She's almost 1. I can't believe it. Hi, everyone. I'm not going to be here for too long. I'm in California right now because of family emergency. Anyway, I'll do a quick introduction. I'm Deb. I have 2 cochlear implants. I grew up queuing and signing and talking. I grew up in Maryland, close to Rockville, and I also work in Arlington County Schools as an itinerant teacher for deaf. But I'm on leave right now with my daughter, who is deaf as well, as I already said. She's going to get her CIs in April after she's 1. So I'm here as a resource. I'm happy to support. So all of you are doing a great job. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
Hi to Patrick.
Hugs to Patrick
Will
and
do.
his dad.
And say hi to Eric for me.
This is Terry. Yay, how exciting a connection. Hopefully we answered your question, Lauren, and I see that Laura put some stuff in the chat too. Directors of special ed, TODs, that would be great. If you do have, like I said, if you have a area that you're focused on, then let us know and we can kind of give you more detailed information. I don't think there's a right answer. I don't think that we could say, oh, this school in Virginia is really good for like a public school, you know, because they're all so different and it just depends on your child really and what your expectations are. So does anyone else have? Yep, Lauren, good.
Yeah, and I just want to add to, when you're thinking about placing your child in a specific school, special program, make sure that they have many students there as well, because you want a variety of friends, right? To get their socializing skills up, that builds their self-identity, that will help with that, you know, that they can interact with. Because for one time I had just one interpreter and she was my friend. I mean, it was great, it was cool, but it's not the same to have other deaf peers amongst themselves, right, that they can interact with. And it wasn't until I got to high school that, you know, that there was other deaf individuals, 50 of them, deaf and hard of hearing in one school in that program. And that just really knocked me on my feet because I grew from that experience, right? From being the only deaf person in my town. I think the social aspect is so important. And then when, you know, they become a teenager, they start to go through that who am I, right? Process, part of their journey. But being deaf and hard of hearing, I mean, that's huge. You want them to go to camps to be able to interact and build those social skills. They need an outlet if they want to just complain about one teacher, right? They can do that amongst each other. They can't relate with hearing students at that time. It's hard for them. So look for a school that, you know, where they may have a large population of deaf and hard of hearing students. I just think that's very important.
Yeah, and this is Terry. Thanks, Lauren. I think that's a perfect segue into kind of the next thing that we could think about is that identity piece, because I know a few of us have mentioned that with our children. It's really hard when they're the only one in school. And so what do? You know, Lauren, coming from Washington, has, and Laura Yellen, for you who just joined us, Lauren, with the little boy on the screen, is moving from Seattle to Virginia. So that's why she was asking where. So you can pick kind of, you know, you can choose, does a school have more deaf children or not? But for some of us, like Rachel had said, her child is the only one. And, you know, is it realistic for her to just move schools right now? It's not. So how do we address that? You know, how do we address, or for Amarine, whose daughter just lost her hearing suddenly, and then she's trying to navigate that new space. Where does she belong? And how can we make our, sorry, the interpreters are moving around. Are we okay? Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't realize we had a second interpreter. I thought I was the only one this evening. So we have 2 interpreters.
Okay, perfect. So how do we get our kids to feel comfortable with who they are, especially when they're the only one in their school? I don't know if there's a right answer for this either. For me personally, you know, we just want our daughter, we are very proud of who she is. We don't want, I wouldn't change it for anything for her to be hearing. I'm so happy that she's deaf, and I want her to feel that same way. I want her to feel proud of who she is. I don't want her to feel like she has to change to be someone else, that she's not. So, you know, finding that inside of you and then instilling it into your kid can be hard. We've been doing a lot of external, a lot of things outside of school. I signed her up for a camp, this summer. She's actually been to camps before in the past, and someone had reached out to me asking about camps. And I realized it was you, Amory, wasn't it? I think it was you about camps. Yeah. And just about what do you do with camps and cochlear implants and hearing aids and this and that. And I realized I've only sent my daughter to a deaf or hard of hearing camp. She's never been to a camp with other hearing kids because she's around hearing kids all the time. And so I really wanted to make that special for her. So when she were to go away, she could be around kids who were like her. And even if they weren't exactly like her, there was just this common understanding, even if they had a hearing aid or a cochlear implant or a Baha, it didn't matter if it was different. It didn't matter if they talked or if they signed or if they cued speech. There was just this common understanding that they were the same. And the way that I saw my daughter connect with other kids who are like her, I could cry. I mean, I don't see her make connections with hearing kids like that at all. And so I think it's just I think this is the first step in the right direction for all of you, to try and empower our children, to be comfortable for who they are. But we need to be comfortable with that first, which can be hard to do. It took a while for me to get here, and I remember when my daughter was little, being in the audiologist office and an older couple just looking at me. They were so sorrowful, so sad. They felt so bad for me that I had a kid who couldn't hear. And it was times like that where I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. I can't feel like this my whole life. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. She's great. She's a perfect little baby. She just has to wear hearing aids. So really kind of digging deep down and feeling comfortable with it. And then I think that your confidence will just carry over to your children, especially as they go through life.
We were very fortunate in St. Louis, because there are 2 deaf schools there, that we had something called Fantasy Baseball Camp. And it was for the deaf. And it was started by a father who had a deaf son who was not allowed to participate. I shouldn't say not allowed, wasn't able to participate in baseball with his peers, his hearing peers. And that was a good social activity for kids from all over the country. Families would come to join in on this fantasy baseball camp. It was sort of amazing how these kids bonded right away, as if they just understood each other immediately. And I would suggest that try to find another, even if it's 1 or 2 deaf friends, and do lots of things together. Mrs. Leakoff, that's Mark's mom, she and I did a lot of things together. The most important thing is to give your child a vast range of experiences. And that child will pick up as much information as possible, increase his deductive thinking skills, his logic. And so I think having a best friend or 2, I think having social activities, you can call the Bell people. They have a picnic once a year. I'm not sure that they don't screen. I mean, if your child is hearing impaired, they're happy to have them at their events. So I would focus on the social, and see if there might be another hearing impaired kid at school or in the neighborhood. That's, I think, what helped Eric bloom.
Thanks. And this is Terry. I'm looking at the chat. I'm trying to follow it. And I see there's 3 Laurens. Laura, I'm sorry, it's getting a little confusing, but Laura Yellen and Lauren Good, are both, identify as deaf adults, and they've put their contact information in the chat for you to reach out to them. And I think that that's just a really important message also, is that there are a lot of people here to support you and to answer questions that you may have, no matter how silly they may be. I think it's very powerful to connect with someone who is deaf or hard of hearing, who has led a successful life, and that can give you a very hopeful picture about the future of your child. I remember when my daughter was born, I was so scared. How am I going to talk to her at night? How am I going to talk to her at the beach? How am I going to do all these things? I was just so worried about it because I just didn't know. I didn't ever talk to someone who was deaf or hard of hearing. And now I realize that doesn't matter. That is not a limitation, at all. My daughter actually says it's an advantage. That's her new tagline. She says that says being deaf is not a disability, it is an advantage.
Yes.
So maybe
Eric
with
once said that too. Yes, he
yes.
said, if I'm unhappy with the noise level, I just turn it off.
So Alicia, oh yes.
Just Eric, Sharon mentioned that Eric does some mentoring. And I don't know exactly how that was arranged, whether it was through the Resource Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing,
I
where.
think it was NVRC. NVRC. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. Sorry to interrupt.
But for Rochelle, you might check out that organization because Eric is, I know, mentoring a boy named Daniel, and he's, I think, about 12 years old. And they do one-on-one mentoring.
It's younger, but that's okay.
But that would just be a resource for you to check out.
It's good role modeling.
Thank you. That's helpful because he's so resistant. He's just struggling, really struggling. And I feel really bad. Like I really feel bad that I hadn't reached out sooner, or it just wasn't an issue until now. And I don't know if it was because of COVID, when they were at home, he could wear his hoodie over his, and not have to show the hearing aids, and they weren't visible. And now we're in-person school, and it's really hard.
Well,
I feel really bad.
The in-person school may help. When we were wearing masks, that was absolutely devastating for deaf people. Can't read lips.
Mhm.
And so as masks become more optional, that may be more helpful in the school environment.
Terry, if there's a way that you can put Rochelle in contact with Eric, I think that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I
will
just
do
wanted
that.
to
This is
throw
Terry.
in. I'm sorry, this is Laura. Can I say something really quick in response to Rachel? I don't know if your child gets itinerant services, but that is something that deaf and hard of hearing itinerant teacher, or even a school program teacher, can work on with your child, because I know oftentimes when my students are like self-conscious, they're in this phase of like, I don't want to wear my hearing aids. I'm not different or whatever, that denial phase or whatever. That's something that's always done as a teacher of the deaf. So I feel like that's something that you can definitely mention to your school team and see if they can address that, even with the special education case manager. There are ways we can address this.
Yeah, so Jacob goes to a small private school, so he doesn't have that support. There's no special education teacher there, I guess. And so that's the other thing I struggle with, is to kind of educate. Like, I feel like it's my responsibility now to educate the teachers. And so, I don't know. So, yeah.
This is Terry. I saw Eric Raff's hand. Where'd he go? Yep, I see you, Eric. And then Lauren Good, I saw you next. Oh, Lauren's typing. I saw Eric Raff and then Lauren Good. Go ahead.
To share some of my experience growing up to maybe help some of you parents have a better understanding of what it's like. And keep in mind it's something that might impact your child. I was the only deaf child in my school. It was a very isolating experience. I had one-on-one support and contact with my peers. So I could communicate one-on-one, but in a group setting with my peers, with everybody talking, over each other, I was completely lost. I felt entirely left out. I couldn't follow the conversations, and it made me feel very lonely, especially in group settings. So I never was a part of any clique. I was never, in the jocks or the nerds or the, all those labels, nothing like that. I was completely independent. I felt very lonely. And sometimes I would join whoever would accept me at that point. And I really strengthened my relationships through a one-on-one, but later on, as I got older, I started to meet more deaf children, the teenagers really, when I was around 16 or 17. And I had never met another deaf kid at that point until much later in my life. And it was one kid who went to a different high school. So I started hanging out with them, and they all used spoken language. There was no signing between all of us, but it was a different educational background for them. But I really enjoyed interacting with them because I felt like they could finally understand what it was like to be deaf. Even though there were some communication barriers, we still understood each other. We would hang out on the weekends and things like that. But again, in a group setting like that, I didn't have anything like that until I went to Gallaudet University and I learned sign, and I started to develop friends in a group setting there with people who had the same background as me, who were isolated in schools as the only deaf child learning sign. And so I made those connections that way at Gallaudet University. And, it wasn't until then, again, when I finally had the group setting, people going back and forth, joking around with each other. And it was a really enjoyable experience. And I realized that I had missed out a lot of that. So I think Deaf Camp, Hands and Voices events, where parents bring deaf children, I think that I would really encourage that, just to expose your children to other deaf children and get them to develop a relationship. And because I've just heard so many stories of kids going to summer camps, and it feels like and they develop lifelong friends through that. And so looking back, it's always nice to it's nice to look back on summer camp days, reminisce on. I didn't have that, but I think it would be very nice to experience something like that. So I would encourage you parents to try and find a resource like that where your child can be in a group setting. So that's my advice. Thank you.
Lauren, good. You had your hand raised.
Yeah, I did want to add that I had gone to Deaf Camp for several years. I was also the only deaf child in school, but I was, close friends with 3 deaf girls that I'm still in contact with today. And 3 hearing girls that I'm still in contact with today, and they learned some sign. But they're still close to my heart, even though they're not deaf. So even if your child is the only deaf child in a hearing school, I think that knowing that I had hearing peers who had that deaf heart to learn a little bit of sign, but I think it would be nice for your children to have, so having a deaf best friend really helped me. And I went to a summer camp when I was in high school for 3 years straight. And then, sorry, it's freezing a little bit, so I'm having a little bit of a hard time, sorry. So I went to camp, between the ages of 9 and 11, and then I went to MSD, where I found out more about myself. I interacted with peers who challenged me, we challenged each other, and having that common thread definitely helped. I was very shy before, but then when I went to the summer program at Model Secondary School for the Deaf, I found a group of friends that I felt very connected with. And it's just nice to know, because it's nice to have like a small deaf program, maybe with like 1 or 2 other peers, but what if they don't get along, right? So I guess it would just depend on personalities and things like that, so.
Yeah, oh, Eric's leaving. Bye, Eric. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I wanted to go back to, is it Rachel? Is that how you pronounce it? Rachel. Alicia and I have, because Alicia's child is in a private preschool, so different, but in a private school, and she is, we're trying to work together. She's doing way more than me because it's her kid, but how to get services to a private preschool. And there is a way to do it. So, your private school may not have a special education department, or it may not have a teacher of the deaf, but your county has a specific pot of money that is allocated towards children who are in a private placement or in homebound students, et cetera. So even though your school may not have that in place, there is money, because it's unfortunately all money driven. There is money where that would be possible. There's also different agencies. I know a few were listed in the chat, but just to kind of let you know, if your child needed a teacher of the deaf, let's say for specialized services, if the school didn't want to hire one, they could contract with another agency who has teachers of the deaf, speech and language pathologists, ASL interpreters, etc. I see that Laura is putting something in. Yes, it is possible to get services. She's an itinerant teacher of the deaf. So, it sounds like you maybe need to have some conversations with some folks in your school district if you feel like your child may need more. And maybe it's not a direct service. Maybe it's not that he needs to work on his speech, or, he's 12. I mean, sounds like he's made it this far, but maybe it's something like advocacy, social emotional skills. Those can be things that teachers can work with your child on. It doesn't have to necessarily be a speech and language pathologist. So don't get discouraged. And I would encourage you to kind of start having those conversations. A lot of times that's not information that's just given to you. It's kind of one of these things where you have to know, you have to understand the laws and your rights and how the Virginia Department of Education works. Their website is very thorough and it's very confusing, but they do have answers. They do have answers buried in there. And I can send you the direct link, actually, because Alicia and I just got it from someone who works at DOE that specifically talks about placements for children who are in private schools wanting special education. So hopefully that's helpful.
I just wanted to jump in. I know I wrote in the chat regarding, services. Oftentimes in my 10 years of experience in special education and deaf education, oftentimes if a student is doing well academically, they hear well with their hearing aids, cochlear implants, they're like, oh yeah, we can do right before, or it's dismissed completely. Just so you know, you do have the right to say no. My child is still struggling socially, or even just emotionally with, their identity. And that's something I struggled with all my life until I was about in high school. And a great teacher for that who was hearing, but she was fantastic. So just so you know, you have the right to request services to be continued in that regard.
Thank you.
Anne-Marie, go ahead. Your child's at a private school too, isn't she?
She's public.
Oh, she's public. Okay.
Which I guess, Laura, just brings me, so my daughter goes to an APS elementary school, and I guess basically, her audiologist says she needs more speech therapy help, but the school's only offering 30 minutes a month. So I think because she's just doing so well, she had 9.5 years of hearing. They just think that
Honestly.
that's enough. They're saying that it's probably worse that she's missing academic time. So I don't know how to push back on that.
Okay, I'm gonna keep this short because I know everybody has stuff going on, kids running in the background. I do too. In my personal experience, they did the same thing with my mom, saying, "Oh, Laura's doing so well. She only needs like 30 minutes a month or an hour a month." And my mom said, "No. She's gonna get 30 minutes a week, period." So she got it. It's not just based on how well they're doing. Think about it: speech and language services support communication. It's not just learning how to talk or hear. It's about the whole picture. How to ask for help, how to, go to a restaurant, put in the order, or make a phone call, call the doctor to make an appointment. That's when you get older. But you do have a right to push back on that. I know as a parent, I'm just talking from my parent perspective, not a teacher with that perspective. Many schools in general, I've learned in my experience working and being in the school myself, is that many schools have their philosophy they want to stick to, like a cookie cutter version, rather than let's look at your child and say what works for your child, where your child's hearing status and levels. How's your child doing in school? What services does he or she need? Things like that. So that is my passion, to help other parents to know their rights and push back when they need to, because you do have the right to do so.
We would like to add also that a child has an IEP. I'd like to focus on the word individual, because so often school districts want to fit you in. It's a, one shoe fits all, and don't accept it.
Right. And this is Terry. I mean, everyone is different and every school system is different, but my daughter, when she got her implants, they were at separate times. Her loss was progressive. So she lost all hearing in her left ear by the time she was 3, and then got implanted when she was 5. And then her right ear, she had lost all the hearing when she was 5 and got implanted at 7. But I tell you that because she had speech every day in school, every single day, even on days when she was in preschool and it wasn't even a 5-day program. I was taking her up to the school for speech, and that was when she got her cochlear implant, because she needed that rehabilitation for her ear. So not saying your daughter is necessarily going to have speech every single day, but you probably know deep down if you want to accept that offer or not, and you don't have to sign anything. Laura kind of alluded to that. Virginia is a parental rights state. So if the school system offers you something and says, okay, we're going to present this to you, 30 minutes of speech a month, you can say no. No, I don't want to sign that. And then it's the school's job to work with you to come to an agreement that to come to something that you're going to agree on, that you're ultimately going to sign. And that may be what it takes. And then maybe they'll say, okay, what about 30 minutes every other week? And you kind of play the game with them, but you do have the upper hand. You do have the upper hand because nothing can be done without your consent. Nothing can also be taken away without your consent. So if your child is receiving speech services every week and all of a sudden they want to take that away, you can say no to that as well. It's just kind of knowing your rights. Oh, Lauren, you're muted. Laura, you're muted.
She said, sorry, it's freezing up. Sorry.
Okay, we'll go. Alicia, did you want to? Oh, okay. You can sign. Yep.
Sorry, the interpreter's going to voice for me. Okay. Because it keeps freezing up and I don't know why. So for some reason, I'm just going to turn off my voice. Okay, so oftentimes though, the schools are understaffed. And I know that they're overwhelmed with COVID and everything that's going on with that, but still your child has their rights to the services. And also your child is an individual, not a one size fits all. So.
This is Alicia. Yeah, just to share a little about what's going on with my son right now. It's kind of similar, but like I mentioned, he's in a private preschool. And he also has an IEP through the county, and he has been getting an hour a week of services with a teacher of the deaf. So she does speech and she does ASL with him. Well, we just met for his new IEP meeting about a month ago, and they determined, based on data from the teacher of the deaf, that he would benefit from an interpreter. The IEP team, agreed on this. But then they said that can only happen if he is placed within the county assigned preschool. And because, it was a hard decision, but for our family, we wanted to keep him where he is, where his brothers went. It's the preschool is part of our church, so we're very connected to the community there. And so I had a really hard time accepting that, we've all admitted and found from the data that he needs an interpreter, but you can't provide one, to an outside private school. So like Terry said, I've been kind of going back and forth and doing my research. And Rachel, I found, like I mentioned in the chat, these equitable services, which if your child is found, eligible within the county, they should be able to provide services to a private school if that's where you choose to send your child. There is a pot of money for that, but it's difficult to kind of get to that point. So that's where I'm at now. It's tricky, and like Laura mentioned, my son has been doing really well academically, and so there isn't a big gap there. So I feel like there's always a lot of pushback for any services that we ask for. So anyway, that's my story, but my advice is to keep going. Like Terry said, you don't have to agree until you're satisfied. And, Amarine, like you never have to sign. There's no rush, you can take your time and just keep going until you're happy with what the agreement that you come to.
When Eric was in public school, Parkway school system in St. Louis, there was something called
FM.
No, the captioning, the
Real-time captioning.
real-time captioning. And so we wanted that for him. He was an avid reader, and we thought he could handle it, and they would not. Special School District of St. Louis County said, no, 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 no. And finally, my husband had to threaten some legal action. We didn't like to do that because you like to maintain a good rapport with the people that you're going to be dealing with all through the years. But they left us no alternative. And finally, they did agree. And they did it because he was unique. He had one of the highest reading speeds of a deaf child in the county. And so they finally said, yes, you can have real-time captioning. But then you see, because of his uniqueness, his reading skill uniqueness, they didn't have to give it to everybody else. They're always looking for ways to curtail their budget. Do not fall for it. You have rights. Your child has rights. Fight for them.
The other part of that is they had in the special school district, they had, I think, 37 sign language interpreters. Eric went to an oral school. So at that stage, and he was in grammar school, middle school, he didn't know sign language. So all they wanted to do was give him a sign language interpreter. He had an implant, but the implant, he only has a partial implant in one ear. He has 10 electrodes fired. So it's not perfect by any means, especially when a conversation was going around the room. So their solution, because it's the service that they had available, was to give him a sign language interpreter. So they gave him that, and then they complained that he was not watching the sign language interpreter. He had no idea what they were saying. So yeah, it's a battle worth fighting for. It's your kid. Nobody's going to fight harder for you, for your kid, than you are. So, you know, find the services, hold their feet to the fire, and don't take no for an answer.
I love that message. I'm so happy, this is Terry, that you've joined us. We love having your wisdom, hearing the wisdom that you that you've acquired. Since we've got about 10 minutes or so left, but Rachel and Amarine, I think it's perfect that you both are on here, actually, because your children are about the same age. Rachel, your son has had hearing loss, but Amarine, yours just suddenly lost her hearing. So is there any, and I know that you're fairly new to the journey too, because your daughter just got implanted, but is there any advice that you can offer Rachel as far as how your daughter's going through that identity? Because all of a sudden she was a hearing child, and then she goes to school and she can't hear and she's getting frustrated. And then she goes to school and she has a cochlear implant on her head. So how is that going?
I'm just fortunate that she's just a naturally happy child. So I think I just kind of bought every book on Amazon that I could find on hearing loss, you know, for her age range. And and she just, because she loves to read. So you know, she was excited about getting her hearing aids. And then when that wasn't working, you know, she got excited about, well, and nervous about the CI. But yeah, that's a good, I don't know. I'm worried that it'll change because, you know, puberty, I think we're in the very early stages of it. So it may change. Rachel, it sounds like your son's like right in the middle of puberty. So
He
maybe
is. If I say white, he says black. If I say yes, he says no. I mean, it just is. So I feel like I don't want to push him because, you know, he's going to push back. I mean, that's his natural reaction now. I mean, and honestly, he was such a sweet child. And so, and it just, it turned. It was like, I don't know, like last year it started to like, you know, he has to have his own space. And so this whole thing with the hearing aids and then it, you know, it dawned on me like he needs a friend.
Yeah.
He needs a friend that knows exactly what he's going through.
Amen.
And socially, he's a very social child. So he plays sports and, you know, and he has friends at school, but he does, you know, he likes to wear his hoodie and he covers the hearing aids. And so he's struggling with that. type of thing. And so I want him to meet somebody, but right now, so I feel like if I can go bring him to an event where it's a family event where he can meet other people, I think that would be helpful. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. I don't know right now if he is ready to go to a camp.
Yeah.
I feel like yeah, right now, but if it was a family thing and like a picnic or, you know, that might be a way to kind of help him meet other people.
I understand. And actually, Amarine, I think you said something really good. You said books. I know there's a lot of children's literature is really gaining traction, featuring deaf characters, deaf authors. There's a lot of stuff for little kids. We read a ton of it in the teen tween age range. We did when, you know, my daughter was younger. That may be a very passive introduction for you, because if he is resistant and he doesn't want to be different and he doesn't want to talk to anybody and he doesn't want to stand out, maybe it's a book. And it's just, you know, they're not lectures by any means.
Right.
There's one that I picked up recently. It's called Jake's My Name, 6th Grade's the Game. And it's about a kid who has hearing aids and his name's Jake and he's in 6th grade. And it's funny. It's written, it's a very quick read. I don't know, maybe 100 pages. It's very casually written. It's silly. It's a silly book. There's nothing of substance to it at all. I read it, but they can still connect with, you know, they're still like, oh yeah, I know what that's like when you're in the classroom and you can't hear that, or, oh, you forgot your hearing aid, the battery died, you know, just little things like that where maybe that would be maybe that would be a start to kind of start normalizing things for him, or just letting him know he's not so isolated. Yes, he's the only kid for what he can see, but there's a lot of other kids like him. And if he doesn't want to meet them right now, then that's fine, but maybe he can read about that. Does he like to read?
Sort of. Only his stuff. He likes to read his, you know, I mean, I guess I could lay it around, but if I say, why don't you read this? Or why don't
No, tell him he cannot read this book.
Right.
Reverse psychology.
Right.
but even like, because he is very sports minded. So like, I was thinking, well, if he can meet someone who is hard of hearing, that he can say, oh yeah, see, there's other people who are like you that, you know, and I even pointed out, I think there was an Olympic swimmer that was also hard of him, you know, but I feel like he just needs to meet people. We need to be in situations where he can meet somebody, where there's no pressure.
Tell him to look up Curtis Pride.
Curtis Pride.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a bio.
He made it to the major leagues in baseball.
Oh.
And quite a guy.
And Rachel, once, you know, Hands and Voices, we're starting to do events again slowly. So I feel like with the weather turning, you know, you said you're in Northern Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll be having something up there, I would imagine, in late spring or summer. And there's a pretty good community up there with a good turnout. So I feel like that would be a great chance. And you know, Amarine too. Yeah, that'd be really nice way for him to just, like you said, slowly be around others and talk as much as he wants to, or, you know, just observe.
Right. Yeah. And this is Terry. I mean, pre-COVID, the world was just so different. We were getting together once a month all over the state, meeting with families all the time. And now that's just since March of 2020, we have met in person one time. And that was this past fall when there was like a little window of normalcy for a bit. And we had regional ice cream socials at a couple parks around the state. And it was great. We had a really good time with it. We look forward to doing that again. I think once we can get something on the books, that would be a perfect opportunity, because it's not just focused on him. You know, you could meet with people, there's adults, there's kids, there's teenagers, there's a whole bunch of people. It's a very, you know, we're not sitting in a room in a circle crying and talking, doing introductions like this by any means. That probably would be a great way. And I would just encourage you to try to continue to do that. I'm sure that's hard for him. I can't imagine how hard that must be to want to hide who you are, you know, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing is how can you build up his self-confidence so he can be proud of himself.
I'm curious, all of you, do you turn your captions on your TV? Do you go to open caption films?
Yes.
Okay.
He does at home.
Alicia, I don't know if you're aware that Paragon is showing open caption movies.
Yes, that's wonderful. Eric's been sharing each week with me.
Okay. Good.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. And it seems like they're continuing, so.
Good.
Rachel, do you think your son would be open to meeting up with someone online? Or do you think that that would be too much of a spotlight situation?
He already told me no way.
No. Okay. I get it.
So, I mean, I just feel so like, I feel like I wish I had reached out earlier that, you know, maybe, but I don't know. We never had any issues before. And I don't know if half of it, a lot of it probably was denial on my part that, you know, everything's going great. And, you know, but.
Oh,
Well,
puberty.
It is, it's not the
Hormones.
deafness, it's the teenagehood.
Is it?
Yeah.
So,
I wouldn't give yourself too hard of a time about it. I mean, and especially if he was doing well and thriving and you were, why would you need, if you didn't need anything, then why would you seek something? And things change. Things
I mean,
don't
and it
stay.
wasn't an issue. Like he even had like, so he had they were big and in the, what are they called? The ear pieces
Molds.
and the molds. He had them all different colors and I was like, well, don't you want something natural skin? Well, Mom, it doesn't matter. They can see it anyway. So it's like, oh, okay, he's fine with it, you know? And then 6th grade, he was like, these are not cool anymore. I can hear without them. And so we would find them in his pockets. He would take them out as soon as he walked out the door. And so, yeah, it's just been the past, you know, couple years.
Well, just remember, I was a high school guidance counselor, and I can tell you teenagehood is all about belonging, being similar, you know, it's belonging to that group. It really is not his deafness as much as it's that attitude and the hormones raging.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it can be easier said than done, but I just tell my daughter all the time, you are different. You are. You're not, you know, she tells me in middle school, the girls stand in a circle and talk and I can't keep up with them. And I'm like, I bet. I don't want her to feel like she has to do anything that she realistically can't do. I tell her, find a group of friends who are quiet and who stand in a circle that you can understand. Don't go stand in a big group of friends, just like Eric Graff was saying, you know, at the beginning. And I think that you're on the right track. You've recognized that there's something going on and now you're trying to figure out what to do with it. And the answer is not going to come to you overnight, but this is a start. And we're so happy that, you know, you joined. And I know we're going to connect with you on the side and I look forward to that. And we'll just try to give you tools to help support your kid along the way and hope he's receptive to them. If anything, he can at least look at it and see, okay, this is here. You know, maybe he'll look at it late at night when you're sleeping and won't admit to it or something. Well, it's 9:30. I'm going to be respectful of our interpreters' time. I want to thank them very much. Civic Access always provides us with wonderful interpreters. Thank you for joining us. And our captioner with Hamilton Relay. Thank you, Monica, for joining us tonight. We do have 2 events coming up, and I'm sure I'll put you all on our email list. And if you follow us on Facebook, you'll see, but they're both virtual. Unfortunately, we're meeting as a board at the end of this month.